Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 3 2020 NFL predictions. Well, after a shaky Week 1 for the Fanatic, this past week was a much better success all the way around for both my against the spread and straight up picks. Arguably one of the best weeks I have ever had making these predictions throughout the years. So for this week overall, I am 11-4 against the spread, and straight up I am 13-2. So that equals up to about 73% on the lines and 87% straight up. Again, arguably one of the best weeks I have ever had making predictions, and I am extremely satisfied with my results this weekend. I should have one more straight up victory, but I will talk about that later in the video. I have a lot to say about that. And now overall for the year so far, I am 17, 13, and 1 against the spread, and straight up I am 22 and 9. So that equals up to about 56.5% against the spread and 71% straight up. Again, I always try to shoot for 70% by the end of the year. It is such a great start to have a straight up percentage of over 70% through 2 weeks. I hope I can maintain it. I'm not very confident about a lot how the season usually goes of maintaining that 7% threshold, but we will see. But what a crazy week in the NFL. So many close games, so many wild finishes to talk about. I want to congratulate the Seattle Seahawks for getting a massive victory against the New England Patriots, 35-30. Though I have to give Cam Newton a lot of credit. He threw for 397 yards, had about 3 total touchdowns, and the one interception to Quinn Dunbar, which made up for the other pick that he should have had on Damian Bird early in the game in the second quarter. But Russell Wilson was spectacular. He was 21 of 28, 288 yards, 5 TDs, and 1 interception. He has thrown 9 TDs for the season and only has 11 incompletions. Right now, through 2 weeks, he is the MVP of the league. But it's still early on. There still are some good performances. Aaron Rodgers had another good game as they blew up the Lions 42-21. But I think the big takeaway from that Seahawks Patriots game is that the Seahawks are going to be carried by Russell Wilson because the Seattle Seahawks arguably right now have the worst defense in the National Football League in terms of yards and passing defense. And they're going to get carried by Russell Wilson's right arm. While the Patriots, I think after you could watch that game against the Seahawks, you have to acknowledge that the Seahawks or that the Patriots are right with the Steelers and the Bills, even with all the opt-outs in that second tier group in the AFC of contending teams that if one of the Chiefs or the Ravens go down, they can be in the AFC Championship game. I think that's what you can take away from that game. I want to congratulate the Cardinals for a nice victory, 27-15 over the Washington football team. I was really impressed with the first half. They seemed to were firing on all cylinders defensively, offensively. Dwayne Haskins only completed about a little bit over 50% of his passes. He'd have 188 yards. Terry McLaurin was the big star for the Washington football team, having 125 yards of those 180 yards. Kyler Murray had 3 total touchdowns, 2 through the air and 1 on the ground. The second half, I was a little disappointed in the Cardinals' offense. I would have thought that would have been a fantastic performance, and you really would have had to start thinking about the Cardinals not only as a playoff team, but an NFC West Division winner. You still can think of that. But I feel like with the Arizona offense, that was a little disappointing that they really couldn't add any more points besides that 21-yard touchdown run by Kyler Murray. And you look at some of the other teams, with a lot of the other teams, injuries were a massive story this weekend. Saquon Barkley, Nick Bosa, Solomon Thomas, Devontae Adams, had an injury, Christian McCaffrey, Tack McKinley. I could, and just the list goes on. And Jimmy Garoppolo, Raheem Mostert. The Niners were just completely decimated through injuries. Some of the Jets got hurt, and it just was a brutal day. Marquise Blair for injuries all around the league. I think that has to partially due to the lack of preseason for this year due to the pandemic as a big concern, but also the conditions of certain fields. Like I've heard about the Jets or MetLife Stadium having a very rough field, and it was very interesting how Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas both went down within 3 plays of each other to basically the same injury. But it was just a brutal day for injuries to all those players that got hurt on Sunday and Thursday. Fast and quick recoveries. Hopefully, all of you can come back soon to watch and play. And that was a tough blow there. But the Niners, they held their own. They won 31, I believe, to 7. It really wasn't that great of a game. I actually was more stunned by the Jets. The fact that they could not even put any more points on the board, even after all the Niners got hurt. There was no Kittle. There was no Garoppolo. There was no Raheem. There was no Richard Sherman. There was no D Ford. There was no Bosa. There was no Thomas. That team was ravaged through injuries, and they still were able to maintain a 6-point hold on the Jets. But I guess when you have an 80-yard touchdown to start the game by Raheem Mostert, that shows how bad the Jets are. And I'll make one more mention of one game because I want to save the Falcons-Cowboys analysis when I talk about the Bears-Falcons game. Is the Vikings-Colts game. I have to tell everybody, and shout out to Gio Knows, a fellow YouTube prognosticator. Please check out so his channel or check out his Twitter to look at his picks. I will put his Twitter in my description, so if anybody wants to see his predictions. That was a brutal game for the Minnesota Vikings to lose 28 to, I believe it was 11. Kirk Cousins back-to-back safeties and back-to-back weeks. He threw 3 interceptions. They really couldn't move offensively. And it wasn't like the Colts played a great offensive game either. I really looked at Indianapolis, and I saw a team that Jonathan Taylor had a great game. First rookie since Vic Ballard to get 100 yards in a game. I think Marlon Mack's time may be done, especially if Taylor can maintain health. But I thought the Colts were just kind of sloppy, and they were just fortunate that Kirk Cousins kept turning the ball over. And if you're the Vikings, this is a serious concern because I'm looking at their schedule, and it's not looking pretty, and I think there are teams that are going to beat them. They shouldn't, just because of their structures. And it should be the end for Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins in Minnesota at the end of this year. I think Zimmer will be gone. Kirk Cousins will be much more difficult with his contract. But that's my thoughts on that. All right, so time for my picks for this week. And time for my picks and thoughts for this week. All right, so this Thursday, when the 0-2 Miami Dolphins go to the 1-1 Jacksonville Jaguars, the Jacksonville Jaguars are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Jacksonville here, -3, and Jacksonville straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-0 Chicago Bears go to the 0-2 Atlanta Falcons, the Atlanta Falcons are 3-point favorites in this game. I like the Chicago Bears here in an upset, so give me the Chicago Bears here, +3, and Chicago straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-0 Los Angeles Rams travel to the 2-0 Buffalo Bills, the Buffalo Bills are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I'm going to continue going with the upsets here, so I'm going to take the Los Angeles Rams here, +2.5, and the LA Rams straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-1 Washington football team goes to the 1-1 Cleveland Browns, the Cleveland Browns are 7-point favorites in this game. I like Cleveland here, -7, and Cleveland straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-0 Tennessee Titans go to the 0-2 Minnesota Vikings, the Tennessee Titans are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Tennessee here, -2.5. And Tennessee straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-1 or the 2-0 Las Vegas Raiders go to the 1-1 New England Patriots, the New England Patriots are 6.5-point favorites in this game. I like the New England Patriots here, -6.5, and the New England Patriots straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-1 San Francisco 49ers go to the 0-2 New York Giants, the San Francisco 49ers are 4-point favorites in this game. I like the San Francisco 49ers here to win straight up, but give me the New York Giants +4. Then the next game, when the 0-2 Cincinnati Bengals go to the 0-2 Philadelphia Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles are 6.5-point favorites in this game. I'm going to take Philadelphia here to win straight up, but just like with the previous game, give me the Cincinnati Bengals +6.5. Then the next game, when the 0-2 Houston Texans go to the 2-0 Pittsburgh Steelers, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I like Pittsburgh here, -3.5, and Pittsburgh straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-2 New York Jets go to the 1-1 Indianapolis Colts, the Indianapolis Colts are 10-point favorites in this game. Give me the New York Jets here +10, but I'm going to take the Indianapolis Colts straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-2 Carolina Panthers go to the 1-1 Los Angeles Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers are 7-point favorites in this game. Give me the Carolina Panthers +7, but I'm going to take the LA Chargers straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to the 0-2 Denver Broncos, Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 6-point favorites in this game. I like Tampa Bay here, -6, and Tampa Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-2 Detroit Lions go to the 2-0 Arizona Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals are 6-point favorites in this game. I like the Arizona Cardinals here, -6, and the Arizona Cardinals straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-1 Dallas Cowboys go to the 2-0 Seattle Seahawks, the Seattle Seahawks are 4.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Seattle here to win straight up, but I'm going to take Dallas plus 4.5. Then the Sunday night game, when the 2-0 Green Bay Packers go to the 2-0 or 1-1 New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers here in an upset. So give me the Green Bay Packers here straight up and Green Bay plus 3.5. And finally, in the Monday night game, in the AFC game of the year, or arguably the game of the year in the entire NFL, when the 2-0 Kansas City Chiefs go to the 2-0 Baltimore Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens are 3.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Kansas City here plus 3.5 and Kansas City straight up. All right, so time for my thoughts on each game. The Jacksonville Jaguars over the Miami Dolphins. This is a game where, if you look at the Jaguars through the first 2 weeks of the season, they have played way over their heads in terms of expectation, in terms of skill. They've had a lot of no names or average scrubs step up. Gardner Minshew has played really well. He's at 6 TDs, 2 interceptions. He's completed over almost 75% of his passes. He's just really surprised me about how well he's played, especially with the running backs of Raquel Armstead and Johnny Robinson, who had a big game yesterday against the Titans defense, which I thought a good defense. And I've been just really impressed with Jacksonville. That if you think about it, if Josh Lambo doesn't miss a kick, they are in a spot where until the pick, they're driving down the field for a game-winning field goal instead of a game-tying field goal when Gostowski made the 49-yarder yesterday. And I just think with the Jags and the Dolphins, like it's something where I'm going to take the home team here in this one. Gardner Minshew, and I believe his only Thursday night game was in Week 3 this time last year. He went 20 of 30, 2 TDs, no interceptions. And I just look at the Dolphins, and though they played better and Fitzpatrick played better, they still gave up 31 points to Josh Allen. Josh Allen had 4 TDs, 400-plus yards passing, and I think Gardner, with kind of the same talent, kind of the same aspects, I think he can put up similar type of numbers. And it's just something where, like, if I look at Ryan Fitzpatrick, I believe this will be Ryan Fitzpatrick's final game as a starting quarterback in the National Football League, unless somebody gets hurt. Because I do believe Tua Tagovailoa will start on Week 4 for the Dolphins. Because I think that with an 0-3 start with how Fitzpatrick has looked, I truly believe that this will be Ryan Fitzpatrick's final game. Could the Dolphins win this game? Sure. They have played well, and I could genuinely see them being in a spot where, they could get the victory here, because nobody also looked at the Jags and said, well, when you look at it, actually, I'll pull up Fitzpatrick's numbers now. Yeah, he went 31 of 47, 328 yards, and 2 TDs, no picks. So Fitzpatrick played a better game. But I'm going to take the Jags here because I've seen more out of the Jags team, and they're at home against a Dolphins team that could win. But I'm going to take the upside of Gardner Minshew and the Jags' confidence over the Dolphins just trying to get victories with an old guy and just setting the stage up for Tua starting in Week 4 after Ryan Fitzpatrick's final game. So that's why I like the Jacksonville Jaguars here -3 and the Jacksonville Jaguars straight up. The next game, the Chicago Bears over the Atlanta Falcons. Boy, give me a couple minutes here, folks, because I have a lot to say about the Atlanta Falcons blowing that game against the Dallas Cowboys yesterday, 40-39. There were a couple great stats that I saw which really pushed the point home about how rare this collapse was. Since the early 1930s, the NFL has tracked the stat of the turnover. When an offense scores 39 points or more in a game, do you know how many victories and losses there have been in that game if an offense scores 39 plus points with no turnovers? 440 wins and 0 losses. Well, after yesterday, that record has to go to 440 and 1. And also, there was another great stat that over the last 20 years, the Falcons had a 15-plus point lead about 5 minutes to go. In the last 20 years, I believe that the number was there have been 1,513 wins and only 5 losses. Now you can add a 6th loss. I cannot explain to you how infuriated I am with the Atlanta Falcons because I should have everybody that took the Falcons, they were the underdog, but we should have gotten that victory. And Dan Quinn's defense folded like a cheap 10. And Dan Quinn's mentality and his team showed with the worst onside kick I've ever seen, where you have 5 Falcons circling around the ball, looking at it like it's a hot nuclear bomb, and the one Cowboy, who was a former Falcon, by the way, that was on that 28-3 collapse, picks the ball up. Dan Quinn did not deserve to get to go on the Arthur Blank jet home. I would have made him walk back from back from Dallas, Texas to Atlanta, Georgia. That he does not deserve that job. His name is Dan Quinn. He should be disqualified from being the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons for the remainder of the season. I know he's still there. He'll probably finish out the year, but he is gone. And Matt Ryan, I like Matt Ryan, but I think he's a bit overrated. And last year he was kind of contributing to how the Falcons were not doing well. This year he's had 61 completions. He's completed the most passes out of anybody in the league, and he's 0-2. And this year I've actually gained a good amount of sympathy for Matt Ryan because he is playing very well. And it's just sad that he puts up these phenomenal efforts with all the offensive talent that he has, and he still can't get victories. So I look at the Bears and going back with the Falcons. This is to me where I think I have to trust the Bears offense being able to score points. I know it's not nearly as talented as Dallas's or Seattle's, and the quarterback play definitely has dropped off the last 3 weeks for Atlanta from Russell Wilson to Dak Prescott to Mitchell Trubisky. And I know Trubisky threw 2 picks against the Giants defense. But the one thing that I will tell everybody why I'm going to take the Bears here is that I saw Mitchell Trubisky just in week 1 put up a stat line of 20 of 32, 300 yards and 3 TDs, and he had a 20-plus point quarter in the fourth quarter to do that against the Detroit Lions. If Trubisky can do that against a Lions team that I don't think is much better than Atlanta's, I'm going to have enough faith in Trubisky that even if the Bears get down as much as the Cowboys did, I will trust that Trubisky can, against this Falcons defense, he has the possibility of making that same kind of comeback. And also, I just feel like, again, with the Bears defense, they've held to 13 for the Giants, and they gave up 21 to the Lions, and Julio only had 2 receptions for 24 yards. I have confidence in this Bears defense that they're not going to let Atlanta score, around that 30 mark. I think they can hold them under 30. I think the Bears can put up about 28, and they win this game. I think like 28. I'll go Chicago gets 28, Atlanta gets 24, somewhere in there. I think the Bears defense can hold the Falcons offense to that 24 points. Let Trubisky, torch that Atlanta secondary. Let David Montgomery run pretty well. And let Cohen, who just got a 3-year extension for about $18 million, run through that Falcons defense. And let the Bears just hold on to get to a 3-0 start for the first time since, I believe, like 2013, 2014. It was either Tressman's first or second year where they had that 3-0 start. The last time I think they went 3-0. And someone please tell me if I'm wrong, if Nagy did it before. So that's why I like the Chicago Bears here +3 and Chicago Bears straight up. The next game. The Los Angeles Rams over the Buffalo Bills. This is a 50-50 game, and I will tell anybody right now, I would not be surprised at all if the Buffalo Bills won this game. The Buffalo Bills have played incredibly well for this year. Josh Allen, he is improving by the game. He had a career high in passing yards, like I mentioned earlier. For the year, he has completed 70.4% of his passes, 6 TDs, no interceptions. He's still running the ball pretty effectively. Though he did have that one play where he drove through about 2 or 3 Dolphins, and he looked like He-Man. But by the end of it, he dropped his sword and turned into Prince Adam. By the end of it. So he still has that chance for those boneheaded, or those weird mistakes. But I do think Buffalo has a great chance of winning this game. But from what I've seen out of the Rams defense and the Rams offense, I have to go with the steadier hand of Sean McVay and Jared Goff. Cam Akers going down for a rib injury is significant, and I do wish him well, but I have trust in Darrell and Malcolm to run the ball effectively against the Bills defense that at times this year, they've done well against the run, But also, I think one of the big problems as well, they let Gesicki get over 100 yards. Tyler Higbee's had a monster couple games. He got 3 TDs yesterday against the Eagles defense. So I think Higbee will have a great matchup against the Bills secondary. And I just like what the Rams have been doing. And it's something where I know Allen has been playing better by numbers this year. And you can look at competition and pretty much say, okay, it equals out, even though you could say the Rams played a little bit of better competition in terms of just pure talent. But I just feel like Josh Allen going up against that Rams defense, I think he's more prone to mistakes or making those, costly turnovers or decisions. He's made a couple of them in the first 2 games that I think that the Rams, unlike the Dolphins and the Jets, they will be able to capitalize and get at least some points off those turnovers. But also, again, I just have to feel like with Jared Goff, this run team, they've been running pretty well. They've been pretty healthy, except Akers and the Bills. I just feel like I think Allen's erraticness is going to be the difference in this game for the Rams' victory. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Buffalo won this game, and I might be kind of kicking myself for not taking Buffalo. But I just, after seeing the Rams pretty much shut down the entire Eagles offense, where they got 7 points off a Cooper Kupp fumble, pretty much they got him 7 points, and how they played against Dallas' offense, which was much more talented, I have to go with the Rams here to win this very interesting game. Underrated game for the entire week. I would say that this is the third best game behind KC, Baltimore, and Green Bay, New Orleans. This Rams-Bills game right here, third best game of the week. Please check it out if you have time. So that's like the LA Rams here, plus 2.5, and the LA Rams straight up. The next game, the Cleveland Browns over the Washington football team. This game to me came down to I saw the Browns play, and they played well enough. Odell Beckham had the big 43-yard touchdown. The big story, though, was Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. They ran for 200-plus rushing yards with those 2 running backs. Both scored a combined 3 touchdowns. Baker, I think, threw 23 times. He looked pretty effective in the throws he had. He made the great throw to Beckham. He had 1 out route to, I think it was Higgins, which was a big play, or a very nice throw. And I just was really impressed with, I guess, how the Browns were able to maintain the game. Myles Garrett had a big sack, which caused the fumble, which got the Browns right near the Bengals end zone. They shut down Joe Mixon pretty well. And I just looked at the Washington football team, and I'm like, there were moments where they had some, life, and I do think they'll be able to score more on the Browns defense compared to the Washingtons, especially with the secondary injuries. But after watching Gibson, basically what Cleveland has to do is double Terry McLaurin. Nobody else really on Washington maybe besides Steven Sims, the one other receiver that of note that I can think of off the top of my head. If Steven Sims beat you, you can live with it. But shut down Terry McLaurin, and I think the Browns get this victory. And it's also a game where I believe the Browns, they're at home, and I just have to go with that. I saw the Washington football team go out to Arizona and not play that well. Do I think they'll look better against Cleveland? Yes, I do. But give me the Browns here, just a little bit more talent, a little bit more motivation, and I think that I think Dwayne has a harder matchup with less talent compared to Baker going against the Washington secondary and defense. Even though I do want to see how that Washington or the Cleveland offensive line deals with the Washington defensive front. If they can get a good amount of pressure on Baker, this game will be more competitive. But I think Baker, with his mobility, he's actually shown that he's a better mobile, running thrower than people think. And I think that he'll be able to make some big time plays. And with how Chubb and Hunt are doing at running the ball, I think they'll be able to get through the defensive line and keep the Washington football team honest. And I think that's how the Browns get that victory. And for the first time since 2014, actually be a game above 500. I know that's a weird thing to say, but that is true. That the Browns have not been above 500 since 2014. So give me the Cleveland Browns here -7, and the Cleveland Browns straight up. That's why I took the Browns -7 and Cleveland straight up. The next game, the Tennessee Titans over the Minnesota Vikings. This is one of those games where I've lost a lot of faith in Minnesota. Just watching the Vikings play and looking at all that offensive talent. I know Anthony Barr left the game with shoulder injury. Hopefully he gets better soon. But they could not run the ball. Kirk Cousins threw 3 interceptions. I don't even think he had 200 yards of total offense with Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph, Irv Smith, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, an offensive line that's pretty much, a good offensive line, and a defense that just really, they did much better. They played against Green Bay. It just over time, when you kept turning it over as often, they got demoralized. And I look at the Titans and I say this, like, I think that the weird thing about the Titans this year is that I feel like they played consistent games, but they kind of like Ryan Tannehill's been able to up or drop his game to compete against the quarterback that they're playing. 2-point win against Denver and a 3-point win against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So their average margin of victory is 2.5 points right now. So you could argue, okay, look, the Vikings are going to make this game competitive, and and there we go. I might have just jinxed myself by getting a push with that number being 2.5. But when it comes down to it, if you look at the offensive lines, I think Tennessee's got a better offensive line. The running backs are about a push in terms of talent. The receiving cores are about a push. I would give the Titans, the fronts are about a push. And I would give the Titans a little bit of a better secondary because they did get two interceptions, one by Harold Landry and the other by their rookie Christian Fulton. But I would have to look at this game, and it basically comes down to the quarterback. And I have to tell you, Ryan Tannehill has played very good football. 6 TDs this year with no interceptions. He got Jonnu Smith right off the bat. Corey Davis caught a big touchdown. And I was just really impressed with how Tannehill has played, so far through the first 2 weeks. It's kind of what like the Titans expected with Tannehill's contract. He's playing well enough with the running game, and this is about A.J. Brown, by the way, who was inactive for the game. I just have to go with the Titans here. I just feel like, again, could the Vikings somehow compete against the Titans? Sure. Because the Titans just somehow just seem to play to their competition every single week. But if you're telling me, okay, who's going to be able to close a close game, give me the Titans here over the Vikings. And I think if it comes down to Gostowski field goal, the line's 2.5. So if Gostowski kicks another game winner, I'll at least get 3 there, and that covers the 2.5. So, and honestly, like I said before, Mike Zimmer is gone as the head coach of the Vikings. This team is just a pathetic shell of itself in multiple ways. The running defense isn't as good. The offense looks putrid, and it's kind of sad with all that money they spent in Dalvin and Adam Thielen that they can't even really generate that much offense. And Kirk Cousins, the sad thing for the Vikings is you can get rid of Mike Zimmer, but you can't get rid of Kirk Cousins. And I actually thought that the Vikings job was probably the best job because of how much talent you had that was locked down long term. I was wrong. That's the Atlanta Falcons job. If Dan Quinn gets fired, everybody go to Atlanta because at least you have Matt Ryan at quarterback with an offense that can at least generate and be consistent. With the Vikings now, with how they played, you don't know. And obviously Mike Zimmer does not trust Kirk Cousins with the stat line that he had. Actually, let me pull that up real quick. Kirk Cousins' final stat line was yesterday an abysmal 11 of 26 for 113 yards, no TDs and 3 picks. So with that stat line, that pretty much tells you go to Atlanta, people in the NFL. Don't go to Minnesota. So that's all. Like the Tennessee Titans here minus 2.5, and Tennessee Titans straight up. The next game, the New England Patriots over the Las Vegas Raiders. Give me the Patriots here because I was incredibly impressed with Cam Newton and the Pats. They played a much tighter game against Seattle than I thought. Cam Newton was able to run the ball pretty effectively. I actually think that for me, when I look at what Cam was able to do, actually, let me look. I believe he threw for the most passing yards. Let's see. He threw for the most passing yards in like years. Actually, yeah, the third most passing yards in his career was yesterday with 397 passing yards. Only his first 2 games as a rookie, he threw more passing yards. And this was not with a talented receiving corps. This is with Julian Edelman, Rex Burkhead, Damian Byrd, Dalton Keene. Trying to think of some other receivers that he threw to, but it was not a great receiving corps. And I was just really impressed. The defense I had some concerns about. Russell Wilson was picking apart the McCourties, the Stephon Gilmore, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year with the 54-yard touchdown to DK Metcalf. He was just having his way. So I do think for the Raiders, they do have an opportunity, especially with how they want to run the ball. I do think Josh Jacobs and Derek Carr will have their moments to be able to score. But I have to go with the Pats here because I just feel like the Raiders, I'm just not sold on them. I'm sold on Josh Jacobs, but everybody else, Waller's been up and down. I don't know how they're, again, I'm doing this video now, so I'll have to see what they do against New Orleans. I think they'll be able to put some points on the Saints, But I just think the Saints' offense is too high-powered. And I think with Cam, with that confidence, they're playing at home. Belichick's had a phenomenal home record. The last time I remember, I think John Gruden going out to the East Coast was last year when they played the Jets, and they got blown out by the Jets. So Gruden's always had a tough time with this Raiders squad over the last couple of years going out to the East Coast. It's going to be a little bit chillier in New England, and I think the Pats, they have a lot of confidence that the Raiders I don't think will have. And I just trust, and they won't have Trent Brown. They may not have Trent Brown at left tackle. That would be a massive advantage for the Patriots in terms of pass rush. But I'm going to trust the Pats here. Better coach, better staff, a lot more confidence going into this game. They're irritated because they know that they probably should have won that game against the Seahawks. And I think that anger gets taken out on the Raiders in a pretty decisive game. I would say between 7 to 13 points the Pats win this game against the Raider team that can be maybe a bit sneaky, but not that good. So that's all like New England here, minus 6.5, and New England straight up. The next game, the San Francisco 49ers over the New York Giants. This game, with everything that went on yesterday, with all the injuries to the Niners, with all the injuries to the Giants, with the lack of talent with the Giants, with Daniel Jones playing up and down. He had, that one horrible fumble. This is a game where literally with these teams in the conditions that they're in, healthy or unhealthy at certain areas of the line, or the opt-outs, obviously, with Nick Solder at left tackle for the Giants. This is a game where I had to go with the better coach. And I have to give Joe Judge credit. He was able to get 2 interceptions on Trubisky, and they are playing Nick Mullins. But Nick Mullins, he's kind of a weird backup. He played Seattle pretty well. He beat Seattle a couple years ago when Jimmy Garoppolo went down. And I just have to go with the better coach here, and this has to be Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan has to be able to beat Joe Judge in a game where both teams, by choice or by injury decimation, are not very good right now. And I have to go with the better coach, and that's Kyle Shanahan. I was somewhat impressed again, even though they were playing the Jets. That was, I guess, impression and equal disappointment in Adam Gase. But I have to go with the Niners here just for the better coach. Could the Giants win? Sure. Maybe Nick Mullins, in a spot that he's not used to. George Kittle's banged up. They have Richard Sherman's not going to play. Dee Ford may not play. I know Sterling Shepard got hurt. This is just a really awkward game. It's kind of unfortunate for the Niners, what a fall from grace they had from last year being in the Super Bowl conversation to probably not even making the playoffs in terms of just trying to get healthy and just what they have left. But give me the better coach here over the Giants. I took the Giants +4, and honestly, just hedge my bets. I can see the Giants somehow winning this game just because, Daniel Jones outplays Nick Mullins. Maybe, Talvin and Jerick McKinnon, can't really run. And they played a Bears team with a talented team, and, Jones just showed that he, can get games close. So if they can cover 5.5 against a Bears team at full strength, pretty much, I think they can cover 4 against a Niners team at a low bar right now. So that's all like the San Francisco 49ers are straight up, but give you the Giants +4. The next game, the Philadelphia Eagles over the Cincinnati Bengals. This is one of those games where I just have to trust Carson Wentz here. Look, this Eagles team is not very good right now. Their defense has got shredded the offensive line got shredded by the Washington football team defensive line. And yesterday, Jared Goff threw for 3 TDs to Tyler Higbee. Henderson and Darrell Henderson had a great running game, and they were just getting beat up pillar to post. And it really felt like the Eagles never had full momentum or control in this game. And I just have to look at, it's something where, look, Carson, if you are as great or as, the $108 million man that you were paid to be by the Philadelphia Eagles in that 4-year extension, you have to beat a Joe Burrow rookie-led team who, by the way, have played pretty well. They've had a combined loss margin of 4 points per game, 35-30 to Cleveland and 16-13 to Los Angeles Chargers. And I think that's the biggest reason why I'm taking the Bengals. But also I think the other reason why I'm taking the Eagles is in the Thursday night game, I believe they lost C.J. Uzomah to a season-ending Achilles injury. I thought Drew Sample played pretty well, but I have to take the Eagles here just because I think the Eagles, they have the experience, they're angry, and they are in the NFC East. The Bengals are not going to win this division by any means of the imagination. I think they've shown a lot of heart, and Joe Burrow throwing for 61 passes, the second most, I believe they said in 15 years. Only Chris Winkie over the last 15 years as a rookie has thrown more passes as a rookie. I just have to go with the Eagles just because I feel like they're at home. They know they're in the NFC East race still with how bad the division is, and they need to be able to beat a Bengal team that will put up a fight, but they should be better than these Eagle teams with Carson Wentz and with the talent that he has on the team. But give me the Bengals are plus 6.5. I just told you their point margin is 4, so you're getting 6. I think they should be able to cover a 6.5 point margin off of that stat alone. So give me that's why the Philadelphia Eagles are straight up, but the Cincinnati Bengals plus 6.5. The next game, the Pittsburgh Steelers over the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans, I don't know, like they've looked okay, and they've had one of the toughest draws. I think they said since like the 1920s or 1930s. I was watching the Ravens game yesterday, and they talked about having the 2 best teams in your conference back to back. Like only like the 1920s and 1930s were other teams playing the best teams right off the bat. So Houston's had a really tough gauntlet. And with how Pittsburgh played, I was impressed with Ben, even though Ben did have that horrible turnover, but he kind of counteracted that with that touchdown to Chase Claypool out of Notre Dame, the big 80-plus yarder. And James Conner had a 100-yard day against the Denver defense that was ravaged by injury, and they were playing Jeff Driscoll quarterback because Bud Dupree sprained Drew Lock's AC joint, and he'll be out 2 to 6 weeks. But the one thing that I am going to use is a stat that I loved during the games I was watching it. The Pittsburgh Steelers right now have the longest active streak in terms of consecutive games with at least 1 sack. That's 59 straight games. And I've seen Deshaun Watson behind this Texans offensive line the first 2 weeks. He has been hit. He has been pressured consistently. And I feel like if the Chiefs defensive line can do it and the Baltimore Ravens defensive line can do it, the Pittsburgh defensive line can most certainly do it as well. And also Pittsburgh is generating turnovers. The Texans coughed up 2 balls yesterday. One for a scoop and score by L.J. Fort, and the other was a pick by Marcus Peters. I could definitely see Minkah Fitzpatrick or Joe Hayden or Steve Nelson or Mike Hilton getting pressures, or T.J. Watt getting a strip sack on Deshaun Watson to make that streak continue for the Texans. Do I think the Texans have a chance? Sure, because I feel like what Jeff Driscoll did was pretty surprising, and that must be a little discouraging for the Texans in terms of for the Steelers moving forward. But the game was a 5-point game with Jeff Driscoll for a majority of the game, and Deshaun Watson is 100 times better than Jeff Driscoll. But I'm going to take the Steelers here just because they're at home. They've had a pretty good home stand. I think they'll be able to run the ball decently. Look, the Texans gave up a 31-yard touchdown run to Mark Ingram on a 4th and 1. I think Snell and Conner together can generate a good enough run game to keep them honest. And I'm just going to trust Ben with his talent. It's going to be where Pittsburgh's talent is going to overcome Deshaun's ability. And that's the difference in the game. And Pittsburgh defensive line. So that's why I like Pittsburgh here minus 3.5 and Pittsburgh straight up. The next game, the Indianapolis Colts over the New York Jets. This is one where I can't buy the Jets. I'm sorry. I watched the majority of that Jets game. It's sad when the Niners team basically gets decimated and you still can't generate more than 6 points. Sam Darnold played mediocre. The best story was Frank Gore at 36 years old got 63 yards on 15 carries. And that was because Le'Veon Bell was hurt. And if that's the only thing I can say that was the best thing that you had, that's a real problem that a 36-year-old running back was the best aspect of your story. You let Jordan Reed, for the first time since 2018, not score 1 but 2 touchdowns. This Jets team is an absolute disaster. And it might be weird, the way I'm speaking. I'm like, why did you take the Jets plus 10? I don't know how the Colts are going to play. Do I think the Colts are going to win this game? Absolutely. You can't just look at the first 2 weeks of the Colts, even though they lost to the Jags, and say that they can't beat the Jets team. Heck, the Jags can beat the Jets right now, from what I've seen over the last 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks. But I just don't know how the Colts are going to play, because if you watch that Colts game, it wasn't that great either way. It was it was 5-0 or 5-3, and you just watch the Colts and you're like, well, Rivers at one point had 160 yards and an interception himself. And I don't know how the Colts are going to play. I would be, if you're playing fantasy, Jonathan Taylor should be a great start because the Jets defense has given up some massive runs. So they gave an 80-yard touchdown run, like I said earlier, to Raheem Mostert. So Jonathan Taylor should be able to run pretty well. But I just think with Phillip Rivers, with the lack of offense they had, they didn't have Jack Doyle yesterday. I just don't know if the Colts offense will show up. I think the Jets are going to be bad, but Are the Colts going to be good enough to cover 10.5 points? They probably will, but I just don't know because if they would have beat Jacksonville by a decent margin or at least beat Jacksonville, I would have said, okay, look, they're on a good roll. They had a big upset. That Jacksonville loss is really making me concerned about taking the Colts -10 in a game against the Jets where the Jets have to have some pride, right? They have to have some pride. I could be wrong, but So I think again the Colts, they run the ball well. They have much more talent offensively and defensively, and they're just better coached. Like after watching the Jets, I really don't know if I'm going to take the Jets the rest of the year. You probably shouldn't, just because if you can hold, and I think the other big decision is when they were down 21-3, I think at one point, and Adam Gase decides to go for the field goal. That pretty much tells you right there that like he doesn't care, and he's just giving up. And that was against I think most of the backups. So give me the Colts here to win straight up pretty easily. I don't think that's going to be the problem. I just don't know if the Colts are going to show up to be consistently dominant, and that's why I'm going to take the Jets +10. I could be probably dead wrong about this. I'm going to kick myself just watching the Jets have to play football again next week with Adam Gase's leadership. But we'll see. But I'm just gonna say the Colts are going to kind of be a mixed bag to show up, and Rivers may throw an interception or a pick six or give him a short field that covers that 10 points maybe by the end. So that's why I like the Colts here straight up, but give me the New York Jets +10. The next game, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Carolina Panthers. This is one where I was really impressed with how the Chargers defense played and how the Chargers offense played. And that was due to the start of Justin Herbert, the 6th overall pick out of the University of Oregon. How did Justin Herbert get that start? Well, Tyrod Taylor had a chest injury early before warmups, and he could not go. And Justin Herbert ended up throwing for 311 yards, completing 66% of his passes, and had 2 touchdowns and a really bad pick, and a bad pick. And I thought he played really well. And I looked at the Panthers, and it was up and down. They really couldn't run the ball that well. Christian McCaffrey hurting his ankle was significant, and he was out for the rest of the game, and he'll be out multiple weeks with that ankle injury. And I just have to look at the Chargers and go, the Chargers are, to me, the better team. I feel like, they've played really well. They played against the Chiefs team. They were 8.5-point favorites last week. They held it to it took a 58-yard field goal for 3 different tries for the Chiefs to win that football game. And I think that Chargers defensive line can roll through the Carolina offensive line. I think the really big offensive weapon that Bridgewater has is Robbie Anderson. DJ Moore has kind of been disappointing this year so far. Curtis Samuel is kind of a weird burner, weird gadget type of receiver. And I think the Chargers should be able to win this game in a close one. But just kind of 2 things here. It's like, well, the Chargers' history over the last several years has shown you that they are 1-score game kings. Like, if they win or lose, they'll be in 1-score games. And for me, I think that's also just the decision at quarterback. I think, let's say if Justin Herbert was starting, I might have taken the Chargers -7. I seriously would have thought for Herbert. I think they should stick with Justin Herbert. He played well enough. And he played better, I think, than Tyrod would. I don't think they would have been as competitive the game as they were if Tyrod was in the game. But Anthony Lynn is saying if Tyrod is healthy, he's going to go with Tyrod Taylor. I think that is the wrong decision because I think Tyrod, just by his injury, Herbert showed a lot. It wasn't like Justin Herbert looked like Nathan Peterman or something like that, where he looked that bad, where you're like, okay, as soon as Tyrod gets back, we have to play him. No, Justin Herbert held his own against the defending Super Bowl champions, and he should get the job moving forward. But with that decision, with that looming, even with the Christian McCaffrey injury that that everybody knows of now, I have to go with the Panthers +7 for that and just the Chargers' history. They're going to be within a 7-point game here for some other reason. Like, it's more likely than not that they're going to be in a close game and either they're going to win it or lose it off a field goal or just some goofy or miraculous play at the end of the game. And I think 7 is way too many with all those variables being considered, even with the McCaffrey injury. It should be an interesting game and a fun game. But give me the Chargers here. They're home. They're more talented. And I've been more impressed with the Chargers over the first 2 weeks compared to the Panthers, where they've looked okay, but then they just had moments where they gave the big Fournette touchdown run, and it just takes out all the momentum. So that's why the LA Chargers are -7, or the LA Chargers here to win straight up, but the Carolina Panthers +7. The next game, the Buccaneers over the Denver Broncos. Tom Brady looked okay, but I have to take Tampa Bay here solely on the fact of Denver's hurt. Really bad. Cortland Sutton left the game. Drew Lock out. AJ Boye out. Von Miller out. Jawan James opted out. Philip Lindsay out. And Melvin Gordon had some nice runs, and Driscoll looked okay, but look, Jeff Driscoll going up against Pittsburgh, and just when you need him the most, he gets sacked. The offensive line gets blown up, and he gets sacked, and they're out of the game. And then they give up a big 40-plus yard run to James Conner. It's one of those things where, look, I think Denver, they've been competitive, and you could give Fangio credit for a lot of moral victories, but this is Tom Brady here, and even though Brady did not look great, I do think that he should be able to win this game. And I know Brady has had a very, interesting perspective. Also, I think it's very interesting with Denver that he has had. Denver is the only team where he only has one game above 500 against Denver throughout his career. He's 7-6. When you look at, I think they have it on the road as well. I do think like he has a losing record on the road against Denver in his career. So this is usually a place of horrors for Brady all that time in New England. But just like the last couple of times when he's gone there, they're not nearly as good. They're right now hurt everywhere, and they should be able to just cover the spread just by showing up. Do I think Denver maybe could compete? Sure, they with Tim Patrick and Noah Fant, who's probably been the best offensive player that Denver's had the whole year. Yeah, sure they could compete, but I don't even think with Godwin possibly maybe not playing, Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones, Mike Evans, Scotty Miller, and the 3 tight ends, that should be enough. Though I am surprised how limited that those 3 tight ends have been used, because I think that's actually one of the strengths of the Buccaneers' entire offense is their 3 tight ends. But I just think, again, Denver's too ravaged. Brady's confident, and he's just basically playing against a bunch of backups and, hurt players, and both sides of the ball have an advantage, clearly, to Tampa Bay. So give me Tampa Bay here. That's why I have Tampa Bay here -6 and Tampa Bay straight up. The next game, the Arizona Cardinals over the Detroit Lions. I like the Arizona Cardinals here because I saw the Detroit Lions. They got off to an interesting start where they were up by about 8 points, and then it all folded from the bottom there. Rodgers had 2 TDs and no interceptions. Stafford threw a pick 6 to Sullivan about third quarter of the game. Aaron Jones ran wild on him. He had over 170 yards of, I think, or he had a 75-yard touchdown run. I think he had over 100-plus yards of scrimmage offense. He looked fantastic. And I think with the Arizona Cardinals of how they've been playing, DeAndre Hopkins is going to have a field day. Kenny Golladay may be able to come back, but I don't think that's nearly going to affect them in the way that they hope. And I just like what the Cardinals defense did. I think that the Cardinals defense can get some stops. Stafford's thrown back-to-back interceptions. He can probably get 1 or 2 more against this Cardinals defense pretty well. And I just think, again, the Lions defense is just shredded. And I just think the Cardinals offense is too high-powered with Larry, with Christian, with DeAndre, with Kenyon, with Kyler, with all those assets, especially with Kyler's running. They'll be able to kind of do the same thing to what Rodgers did, if not better, because of talent. And I just back to the scene of the crime, too. The last time they played in week 1 last year, it was a tie game. The Lions couldn't even beat them. So with what's happened with these 2 teams, even the Lions, you argue, have somewhat gotten better. The Cardinals have gotten way better, and they've gotten way better to where this 6-point margin is easy, I feel like. And they should be able to roll over the Lions, just like the Packers did. So, Patricia, you got about maybe 2 more games this week and next week, and you should be fired by the bye week and let one of your assistants take over, and then let the Lions try to find their next coach that's probably not going to do one either. So that's why I like the Arizona Cardinals here -6 and the Arizona Cardinals straight up. The next game, the Seattle Seahawks over the Dallas Cowboys. This is a game where I'm taking Seattle here just for Russell Wilson, because I have watched both of these teams through their first 2 games. Dak had 450 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. I think they said he was the first quarterback since the 1960s and Jack Kemp to have 3 rushing touchdowns and 400 yards passing in a football game. Zeke had 28 touches, and he had a good game. Zerline kicking the 46-yarder was very good. And the Cowboys defense, by the end, were able to get some good defensive stops enough to keep them in the game. But then I just have to look at Dallas and say this: they fumbled 4 times in the first half, and I don't think if Atlanta can get that kind of pass rush, Seattle has not been very good at pass rush. Like I mentioned earlier, they've only had 3 sacks for the year, and they had 2 by Jamal Adams. I think that Dallas will not win just based off the fact that like Russell's going to outplay Dak. Russell Wilson has had a great track record against the Cowboys over the last several years. I believe he's only lost 1 time to Dak Prescott, and that was in the playoff game. He's never lost to Dak in Seattle. Russ has beat him in 2017. Russ beat him last year, or 2017. Russ beat him, I think, last year, or he beat him in 2016 and 2017. I think Dak's only got 1 victory in the playoff game, so Russ has got this advantage 2-1. And with the Cowboys, injuries still not really there, and Ty Smith didn't play, which is massive. But I know the Seahawks, they have their own injuries with Blair and Bruce Irvin, which I think will be something to watch. But I'm just going to take the Seahawks here to win because they have the better quarterback there at home, and they just have the momentum that I can trust compared to the Cowboys. And coaching as well. I'll take Pete Carroll over Mike McCarthy in a coaching matchup any day of the week, especially with these 2 talents right now. But I'm going to take Dallas plus 4.5 because Seattle's defense is the worst in the league in pretty much every statistical category. So I know Dak and that offense will be able to score. And I think it's going to be, if it was 4, I might have taken Seattle -4, but 4.5, I could see a 35-31 game. So, or something like that, 38-34. Such a high scoring game that the Dallas Cowboys are able to cover that 4.5. So that's all like Seattle here straight up, and the Dallas Cowboys though plus 4.5. And the final 2 games, the Green Bay Packers over the New Orleans Saints. This is one where I believe Davante Adams is going to play, and I don't believe Michael Thomas will. And that is the difference in why I'm taking the Packers to win this game. Both teams, I think, look running-wise, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, or Aaron Jones has been running really well. Kamara kind of had he had 3 TDs, but kind of an average game. And the defenses kind of had their ups and downs. I need to see how New Orleans does against Monday night. But to me, it just comes down to talent. And I have to go with, if Thomas was playing for New Orleans, I probably would have taken the Saints to go in that home dome. I don't think he will. And I love Emmanuel Sanders. And I'm going to be fine tonight against the Las Vegas Raiders. But the Packers defense is different. I like Jair Alexander. I like King. I like Savage. I like the Smith brothers. And I think the Packers defense can hold enough without Michael Thomas there that Rodgers gets this victory. Would I be surprised if the Saints won? No. The Saints are a talented football team. They're one of the best. But the difference in this game is Mike Thomas' injury. I do not expect him to play next week. And I expect Davante Adams will. And that'll be the difference in the game for me while I'm going with the Packers. It should be a great game. Again, second best game of the week. Behind Chiefs-Ravens, but in front of Rams-Bills. This is the second best game of the week to me. I'm going to take Rodgers here with Adams because Breeze doesn't have Thomas. And I think not having Thomas in this kind of game is the difference in why the Packers win on the road in New Orleans. Something that does not happen that often. So that's all I like the New Orleans Saints here, or the Green Bay Packers here plus 3.5, and the Green Bay Packers straight up. And finally, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Baltimore Ravens. This is one where I have to go with the better quarterback. This is one where, look, I know the Ravens, this is my own hometown team. We played pretty well. We've had 12 straight wins of 10-plus points. We have not lost a regular season game since week 4 of last year to Baker Mayfield. Lamar is 21-3 as a starting quarterback in this league, and he has played sensationally well. Another 2 TD no interception game, and we have been basically wire to wire better than both the teams we played by a mile. And it's not like those 2 teams are not scrubbed. Do not have scrubbed talents or talented. They do have some talent on their rosters. But in this game, look, I watched the Chiefs game. Kudos to the Chargers defense, and I know the Ravens defense has a better secondary, better coaching. And, we have the better quarterback and more dynamic offense. But Mahomes was still able to get a 54-yard touchdown to Tyreek Hill. Still able to get a 21-yard plus run on a 3rd and 20 conversion. And I just have to go with Patrick Mahomes because here's the thing, everybody. 21-3 is Lamar Jackson's record. Out of those 3 losses, the one guy that he's beaten him twice is Patrick Mahomes. And I feel like there were some moments in the Ravens game where Tavon Young going down with a knee injury, good luck to him. Hopefully he'll be okay. That was a big blow. I think that will hurt the secondary a bit. And I just got to go with Patrick Mahomes. Like, would I be surprised if the Ravens won this game? No. And there's a part of me that wants the Ravens to beat the Chiefs because I do not want to have to come here next week. And like I maybe said in my first video, or I'll say it now, I think if the Chiefs beat the Ravens, you can pretty much wrap the AFC up in a bow with that loss for the Ravens. But I have to go with a better QB here and a little bit of better talent. And I know this: if the Chiefs have gotten in a lead most of the time against the Ravens, and I've seen Mahomes time and time again. Actually, if you discount 2018, he's undefeated by trailing within 10 plus points over the last 2 years. He has never lost a game besides the 2018 AFC Championship game where he's trailed by 10 plus points. So I know he can come back. If the Chiefs are able to get a turnover or get a stop and be up 14, I don't know if Lamar can do that yet. I think that will be the test that I'll be interested in seeing. And I think he fails where I think Mahomes will be able to succeed in this game. This should be the AFC Championship game. It's going to be a phenomenal game any way you slice it as a fan. But give me the Chiefs here. The better quarterback, the better intangibles, the better arm talent. And I think Lamar will just come up short again. It's very much like Peyton and Brady throughout the last several years. This is basically the new Peyton Brady, and where Mahomes is Brady and Lamar's Peyton. So, all right, so that is it. So those are my picks for this week. Good luck to all players, coaches, teams, fantasy players, and fellow prognosticators across the world. And until next week, like, comment, rate, and subscribe to this video. And until next week, where I give you my Week 4 predictions, this is Matt the Automatic signing off. Everybody, please stay safe, socially distance, wash your hands, wear a mask. And until next time, this is Matt the Automatic signing off. So long.